Thanks, Chairman Cotton, for holding this very important hearing. For those of us who served, Senator Cotton and myself, we've seen China on the rise and the growing national security threat. The economic element of that is really important for us to be addressing today, and what we can do, how we got here, and what we can do to address this for our own national security, for our public health, and to ensure that China does not replace us. They're trying to replace us and dominate the world. We've seen that. They're doing it in plain sight as a parasite off of us. So I appreciate the thoughtful discussion today about this. You know, as was already discussed, unlike previous, the Cold War of the West against the Soviet Union, we're in a situation where over the last many years, we've become economically entangled with China. And as has already been discussed, supply chains for national security elements, our critical minerals, our pharmaceuticals, our PPE, semiconductors, somehow in plain sight have been shipped over to China. And we're now in a place where we're reliant on an adversary for these things. And they've already threatened at different times to cut those off. How do we disentangle ourselves as quickly as possible to ensure that our national security is not at stake as tensions continue to rise? So it's protecting American jobs, but also American security. There was a hearing yesterday about coronavirus vaccine development, and companies were asked, they said they would be making the vaccines in America, but it wasn't clear whether there were any elements that would be reliant on China who could use it against us or threaten to cut that off with increased tensions. So Mr. Morrison, can you just comment on, this is a very different great power competition, and the entanglements are deep and wide, and what do we need to do immediately? What does Congress need to do? And then what does the private sector need to do on their own to, as quickly as possible, disentangle us economically?
Thank you, Senator. You're exactly right. When I got my last flu shot, which I guess was probably last October, I grabbed the little wrapper that the flu shot came in, and sure enough, made in China. So the flu shot itself was, we don't even produce here anymore. And so can we make sure that the syringes and other basic commodities, the active pharmaceutical ingredients we need, are not under the thumb of the Chinese Communist Party? Unfortunately, we didn't get into this mess overnight, since the decision was made to bring China into the World Trade Organization over 20 years ago, and we're not going to get out of it overnight. We need to do a number of things in parallel. We need a new free trade bloc. We need to harness, I referenced we have $200 billion or so between the DFC and the Exim Bank that amounts to a sovereign wealth fund. We need to harness that right now. We need to harness the Defense Production Act, harness free trade. We need to map our supply chain. 2.5 million Americans with Huawei source code on their pacemakers. Where else are those kinds of compromises? But we have a plan. The Chinese aren't shy. They use the Made in China 2025 plan. Start with those strategic goals, those state champions. Map those supply chains. Figure out who our allies are that we can partner with. I don't know about you. I won't lose much sleep with 5G partnerships with Sweden, Finland, or Japan, but I do when it's Huawei or ZTE.
Yep.
And so just to not burn all your time, we need to do a lot of things, and we need to do them all at once, because we've been digging this hole for over 20 years now, and we need to stop digging as the first triage.
Great, thanks. I know other panelists may have something else to say, but I also want to address first talk about our supply chain for things that we need and how we've outsourced it to our adversary. But similarly, we have China investing in US companies. We have China bidding for public transportation bids in major American cities. We have China supplying drones to local law enforcement and other entanglements on the stock market with double standards and not having the same kind of oversight. So can we talk about the reverse of it too, and what China is doing that also puts us at risk economically and security-wise, and using our rules and taking advantage of them, which is also a place of vulnerability for us? And that's for any of the panelists. Mr. Morrison, if you want to start.
So, Congresswoman, I'm sorry, excuse me, Senator, forgive me, I've worked with you on HASC. There are any number of things that the administration is considering. You talked about drones. The president right now is considering an executive order to prohibit Chinese drones.
Yeah.
There's a 2013 MOU with China that allows for Chinese companies to benefit from access to our equity markets and not have to comply with basic standards that American, European, Japanese companies. That needs to be torn up post haste. I think there are any number of things that are actively being considered where Congress and the oversight from this body, from this panel, from this body, and the other body can help to shed light on where China is trying to compromise our freedoms and our transparency, but don't reciprocate in any measure on their own domestic market.
Great, thanks. I think I'm over my time. If anyone other panelists wants to jump in, I know the chairman wants to keep good time here.
Just very quickly, China's whole premise is based upon technological superiority going out into this new century. We need to make sure that our technological capabilities, which have proven themselves to be over time, can continue to develop, and we need leadership at the highest level in many areas. There's some very good work coming out of some of the financial regulators here in the US, but perhaps greater coordination and some instructions from Congress would be helpful to further our own ability to keep pace technologically, certainly in the financial technology area.
Great, thanks. I'm way over my time. I'll wait for another round, but thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator McSally. I believe that